Hello and welcome to AI, Data and Digital Profession podcast interview series. I'm your host. I'm Asif Gill, Professor of Computer Science at the University of Technology, Sydney. Today I have a guest who will talk about the complex data management. Mick, welcome to us.
Thank you. I'm Miroslaw Mioduszewski. I'm Director of Analytics at Department of Customer Service, Revenue New South Wales. I've spent my life both in private and public institutions, large and small, both on a business and technology side, and that's probably what I really like, binding the two things together.
That's fantastic, Mick. And thank you for making time today. You have extensive experience, in particular in government. You know the history of how the data management evolved over a period of time. So I'm going to ask about your own journey as well. For someone who is going to be starting their journey now in data management profession, what was your journey? What are the key steps you took to become what you are today?
I started at the very bottom. I started programming in COBOL and assembler, and then moved on to other things, and then grew up to management and architecture and the like. And that's not just data and systems. I found that in order to succeed, you need to understand both the business side and the IT side or the data side, and they're not separate things. They interact. So I would encourage everybody to get very curious and very interested in all of these three places. And the value happens when you connect them. The value is not in any one of these things or just one of these things. It's what you can do with it, like any bunch of tools. I think that the concept of what data architecture is and data design and what you can get out of data has evolved over the last, say, 30 years. Data used to be something that you just push around in systems. Today, data very often takes the first place, front and center, because it's actually information. And even now, what we're trading and what we're going to be trading is information. It's not the speech that made a difference, but the information.
Now that's very interesting. Mick, you mentioned about starting as a programmer and then all the way to the executive director of data management and different hats you wore in between. There's a lot of hype nowadays about AI. And other day, I was talking with another expert from decision point of view. Data, they mentioned, is a key to decision making, the way we deal with it. So government, all they deal with the data, and the service data is very key for them. So when we say data-driven government, what does it really mean by data-driven government?
It doesn't mean AI-driven government, even though a lot of people would like you to say that. I think if you actually take a look at the processes that we interact with all the time, whether it's commercial or government, we expect decisions to be evidence-based. We expect actions to be evidence-based and based on data. I think we had a cup of tea and I said, analytics is using data in Revenue New South Wales today to, for example, in real time, direct telephone calls of call it a couple million telephone calls in real time to the best person that can help the customer or the public. So the value flows from customer service. The value flows from being able to save costs and redeploy this cost somewhere else to help somebody else. I think hype in AI is perfectly reasonable. Companies are making AI, they want to sell AI, they'll create hype. We've seen it before. We had a dot-com boom, we had all kinds of things. But I think it's how you use it So first of all, it shouldn't be about AI. It should be about how you use it. And secondly, one should consider the value and the risks and the public good. So in my situation, you don't do AI for the sake of AI. You do AI to help a customer. You do AI to help efficiency. You do AI to find potentially characteristics of people like vulnerability so you can divert them to a better channel. Then you have to watch things like, am I allowed to use this data? Is this data private? Is it going to propagate to a place where it shouldn't? You know, do we retain data sovereignty and data residence? Those are the dimensions that are necessary so it can be trusted. The automated process can be trusted. And maybe I shouldn't even call it AI, because the same principles should apply to any other automated process, whether it's online or batch or any other job. How you use, what data you're allowed to use for which purpose is absolutely paramount. It shouldn't be the Wild West of whatever I found on the internet will do, because that will not only compromise integrity of the process, but integrity of the decision making.
True, very true.
And maybe one more thing. There are some things that, so maybe one more dimension. People always have to have the overriding authority over any automation, in my view. You can't have a process where the computer said no or a computer said yes, and that is a final. A human being should always be able to inspect, override, because until such time that we treat automated processes and AI as equal peers or our superiors, a human being must retain the right to make a decision. And sometimes you can provide advice from the system, and a human being must make the decision. There is legislation that says there are some things that have to be done by a human being.
On that point, legislation, I know you manage a huge team, our multiple teams. There are technical challenges around handling data in such a large environment, but also the regulations and compliance, you have to deal with it. Mm-hmm. So how do you sleep in the night, and how you manage those kind of challenges while the legislation, complexity, and all these things?
I sleep well. I sleep well because I have a team of people who is interested and curious enough to find out where things start and where things end, and what is allowed to be done and what is not. So yes, the regulatory framework can be a bit complex, because you've got federal legislation, state legislation, you've got privacy laws, you've got confidentiality laws, but if you are interested, you can draw boundaries about what's being allowed to use in what way and how and for what purpose. So it's like a level of abstraction, which is, what is it going to do, for whom and how? I don't think that there is a way of bypassing this complexity. Like some things in life, sometimes you need to learn and develop a very good understanding and put it up for critique and make sure that your partner's absolutely aware of what you're doing with the data. I have an example where it was a little bit funny, actually, because one of my colleagues wanted to use data for a particular purpose, and we wanted to share it with a partner agency. Some people, well, there is an agency called Service New South Wales. It's quite famous now in New South Wales. And I said, well, I need to get permission to use it for this purpose. And the comment was, and we need to finish the job. And the comment was, but Mick, you already have the data, don't you? you already have a result. I said, well, I have a result, but I'm just not allowed to use it. So sometimes, if you have enough respect, you need to make sure that all of your partners are on the same page, and it's lawful, and it's ethical, and you're comfortable with it. Because if you don't do these checks, you might actually not sleep well at night.
That's true. We got that point about, you mentioned about data flows essentially between different agencies, and then you have to deal with it. Of course, at the university level, how to simulate that experience or teaching, because maybe students are working with one database or so or two, but having that real experience, how it's not only about managing data in one place, but data can come into you in your organization and leave as well. So my question is that around, how do we ensure that data trust, that data flow is coming in, and of course coming out, going out as well? How would you assure the trustworthiness of data?
I may be a bit controversial at first. I don't trust data.
Well, that's a news for me, but you're managing the data.
I should be very careful how I say this. If you take a large enough data set of observations about the real world, it will not be 100%. Its quality will not be 100%. So when people say, is this data absolutely right? I always say, some of it is absolutely not. So that's one point. The second point is that, and you then have to, once you realize this, you have to guard against this, right? You have to say, to what extent am I going to rely on the quality of this data? Yep. And sometimes this quality takes, it's not the quality, it's the semantics, it's the meaning. So if I take data from Australian Taxation Office, what they mean by income and what I mean by income may be quite different things. It's got the same name, but it means different things. And so I would say, if somebody says old, but a person is old, I would say, well, they're probably in their 80s. But if I talk to a 20-year-old, to them old is somebody in their 40s. True. So I think that, I think sometimes the most important and the most difficult things is to make sure that all of the players that are using data and interchanging it, understanding the same meaning of what it means. So when I see certain data flows, it has to be, and we were involved in a small project around complex data management, and a lot of this was around what is the meaning of this data? The semantics of the data, how should it connect? Because something produced by IBM, something produced by Facebook, something produced by Australian Taxation Office, and something produced by New South Wales Transport could use absolutely the same name, but have a completely different meaning.
That's very true, and it makes me think about, it's not only the data is important, but also the semantics and metadata for the context. It might be different for A to you, right? But when it comes to you or an individual citizen, that's different meanings for income for them. Income for them to declare, let's say, in the tax, or income to share, okay, apply for a loan. So that's a different meaning, right?
And I'm glad you said citizen, because I forgot to mention it, because their meaning of certain actions could be quite, and their experience of certain actions could be quite different to what's actually intended. So sometimes people talk a lot about process design or experience design, and I think it's a very important discipline, because it's actually, it doesn't matter what I say, it's what you hear. And in the same way, if in my current agency, I work for the Department of Customer Service, work for Revenue New South Wales. If you're sending out a message, you need to test that it is understood in a way that you want it to be understood, and and it's not misunderstood, because often that creates rework, that creates problems for both parties. So, and if we have enough respect between data partners, system partners, the community, it can be a difficult thing to solve.
Indeed, indeed. And it's more we dig, and we worked on the complex data management project. We spent probably maybe a lot of lead time to the project and a lot of whiteboard session to unpack even the problem. I have a couple of questions, one for actually to us and one for the students' perspective. For us, we're looking into modernizing our data teaching. So what kind of a data technology is currently using, and what kind of a data technology you would like us to suggest to include in our curriculum?
The flows of data are starting, so there are at least two sides to this. I'll start from a softer side. Borrowing on a meaning, consider the ethics of how the data should be used and how the automation should be used. Then consider the integrity of data flows between the processes. I think people don't talk about it enough. They just assume it will be okay. But from outright technology perspective, or maybe the way to use the technology, and again, I mentioned it recently, maybe over a cup of tea, because the data flows are starting to get large and rich, you can't single stream them. You need parallelism. So managing data concurrency, I think, would be something that students should learn. I think it is partially driven by hardware. We used to grow boxes bigger and bigger. Now we grow them that way. And very often we process things through multiple machines, and you need to ensure process integrity, and you need to do it fast. We have one at Revenue New South Wales. We have one particular suite of products which compares something to the tune of 100 million records by 100 million records. That's a very large number. Yeah. So doing it in parallel and optimizing this becomes very important. And then it's a question of how incremental is it versus do you do it all from scratch? I think we should be teaching graph logic. I think we should be teaching metadata. I think we should be teaching concurrency because some problems aren't little. Some problems are big and some problems are complex, and they just don't get solved by a single process or a single thread. I think I have a small love for databases. Yeah. I think databases are undersold for being able to do many things concurrently and serve many people from many systems. I am a fan of having well-defined abstractions and interfaces with a contract around them. So you know how you were talking about trust? Well, if you're using a process, you need to know how it's going to behave. So by design, it needs to be defined. What can you rely on? What are the guarantees? I think some of what I see, people coming out of universities don't learn these fundamental concepts. They maybe sometimes skip them and go to the next layer of abstraction. I think some of these basics really matter. I am quite technology agnostic, so I could name half a dozen or more technologies that are specific, but it's actually how you use it and how they interact that makes all the difference, because I am yet to see a technology that just solves everybody's problems.
Yeah, So heterogeneous hybrid data environments. And I didn't name it data cloud because you covered pretty much in that, so avoiding the technology, but specifics, but I think currency and parallelism, that's really important.
There are products like Apache Spark, and they exist in now multiple encasings, including the original one called, say, the Databricks, right? And Databricks is used by Department of Customs. But it's got some lovely properties. You can work through it as if it was a function and create a pipeline and have it distributed. You still need to know what you're doing, but it will give you parallel and concurrent capabilities of processing that today I think, frankly, are quite necessary. So unless you're running a small fish and chip business, if you're running something that has millions of customers and you have hundreds of millions of records around them, and so we need to bind them together, we need to solve for it.
Miko, I'm going to wrap on the last question. Knowing you started your career from the really bottom, as you mentioned in the beginning. I mean, leader like yourself who can probably see through the problem all the way to downstream and can see upstream is rare to find. At your level of such experience, I mean, working with you for a while now, what is your legacy, number one? What do you think, what you leave us with here now, and what would you recommend for students and early career professional leaving the university or just left the university? So two parts of it.
Just in case my kids are going to watch it, they're my legacy. I never looked for a legacy, but if I was to pick one, many people I led, managed, and worked with have developed and now are in very senior positions. And I'd like to think that whenever I look back, I can say that all of the automation, all of the data, and all of the services, they were not evil. They actually helped people. And it happened in telecommunications, and happened in government, and happened in finance, where all of this was for the good, where I think sometimes we get ourselves in situations where we wonder if we're going to be ashamed of what we're going to do. I don't think we should ever go there. Now, for people leaving university, I think...
Who would you hire? Let's say, put it that way.
People who continue to learn and continue to be interested, because who we hire today and the skills, specific skills that they have today, they will need some of the different technical skills in 10 or 20 years will have retired or passed on. So ability and the curiosity to continue to learn, I think, is number one. It's good for the organization and it's good for the person. I also think that people who are interested in why we do some of the technical things, so they can understand the technology and how it links to a business. What does it achieve? Because if they come in with predominantly business skills, it's good for them to understand how the technology can be used. And if they're coming out from, say, computer science background, it's great that they understand technology, but they need to understand how does it benefit the organization or the community, what's the use case, right? And above all, and for me this is a red line, ethical behavior and honesty. Because there is a lot of times when people go close enough, I won't tell them that there is an error in here, or I won't tell them there is a 2-degree margin for error. I think honesty in what you can trust and why you can trust it and who can trust what is lovely. You know, my advice always to people is be kind and be acceptable of failure. Well, not constant failure, but we all make mistakes.
Extent, of course.
I think, I don't know, for this week, I don't know why, the quote keeps coming to my mind. Was this lovely guy called, I think it's Charlie Chaplin that said that in close-up, everything is a tragedy. In long shot, everything is a comedy. You can remember what you succeeded with, but there'll be failures. And if we're kind to people and don't persist with a tragedy, then they'll pay you back. This is a good way to be, because I think everything works, at least these days, works in teams are more powerful than individuals. And field is just too large for everybody to know everything. So we need to be able to put groups of people together that can actually actively help each other and have a culture where if you drop something, I'll pick it up and the other way around. So much of these skills are in ability to relate, communicate, be honest, and be technically competent. But not technically competent in, you know, if somebody came to me today and said, I still know COBOL 73 and that's all I know, chances are we wouldn't hire them because the world has moved on. So that continued ability to learn, I think, and curiosity is paramount.
That's a good finishing point, I think, for our students and early career professionals. There are a lot of take out, I think, at least for me, it's not only about the data, but the semantic and metadata for a context, or within a context, is really important. Thank you very much, Mick. And yeah, thanks for your time, and thank you, everyone. Till then, goodbye, and we'll come with the new topic. Thank you.
Thank you. It was my pleasure.